Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well folks, are you ready to start wallpapering your home with US dollars? Are you ready to get your wheelbarrows out so that you can haul all of your United States Federal Reserve currency to the store so that you can buy a loaf of bread? Because that day is a little bit closer. Amongst all the talk over the last couple of weeks, I mean, it's been more than a couple of weeks, but it's gotten a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks of de-dollarization, of various countries saying, you know, we're going to do trade in something other than the US dollar, or we just don't want to have anything to do with the US dollar. Well, it's gotten, I would say, substantially worse. And remember, before I go any further, the Kenyan president, you know, some guy that most people have no idea, you know, who this guy is, said a couple of weeks ago that the whole US dollar market's going to change in about 2 weeks to get your money out of US dollars. So anyways, yesterday, if you haven't heard, France's president, Emmanuel Macron, stated that Europe needs to end its dependence with the United States and the United States dollar. That's significant, folks. I mean, that's a big deal. Up until now, other than China, big country, but not too surprising. Russia, also not surprising. And Saudi Arabia, the only one that's a little bit surprising, have been the only bigger countries, really, that have come out and said, you know, we're not really interested in the US dollar anymore. Most of the other countries are smaller, nations that don't pull a ton of weight when it comes to international trade and influence, but still, it's a buildup. France is different. Number one, France has been our oldest and at times closest ally. I mean, we wouldn't be a country today, probably, if it hadn't been for France's support over 250 years ago, around 250 years ago. They also are very influential in Europe. They're a major player in the European Union, hold a lot of influence, and have been trying to be a major influential part in resolving the conflict in Ukraine. So this is a really big deal. To give a little backstory on this, of course you all know that France is falling apart, but who cares? That doesn't mean anything anymore. America's falling apart too, so it seems like every other country's falling apart, so it doesn't matter that. I mean, but anyways, so while France is burning to the ground practically because of the massive rioting and really revolution-style rioting going on in France, France's president went to China to meet with Xi Jinping. I mean, he had to go get his marching orders, and who knows what was said, what was discussed in that meeting. But apparently, my guess, my assumption, and I know what assumptions are, we won't say it here, but the assumption is that Xi Jinping must have clued him in on something, some of the plans, something. Because on his flight back from meeting with Xi, on the plane, in fact, is what they say, he was answering some questions from some reporters on the plane. And that's when he said, the European Union, Europe, needs to start ending its dependency on the United States, that they need to stand on their own, that they need to, stop being so codependent on the US dollar for its existence. They have their own currency. They need to kind of, stand on their own 2 feet. I don't disagree with that with any country, but folks, this is significant because if you have China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, a lot of Asian countries, a lot of, if not most, of Africa, lots of the Middle East, several places and countries around South America, and even possibly Mexico, and then now Europe, or at least parts of it, saying that they're not interested in the US dollar. I don't know that there's too much left to give the US dollar much more power. Now, I understand nothing's happened yet, it's all talk, but you have to realize that there's got to be countries out there that have been thinking for a while that they just want to end the dependency on the US dollar. They want to end it. It's not profitable for them. They don't like the direction the US is going. They see the United States being weak and in extreme amounts of debt, and they want to get out from under the dollar. But they may have been a little shy about being the one to pull the trigger first. They're waiting for a few others to kind of blaze that trail. And now with France making this statement, this is epically big. And then on top of that, because there's really only a couple of things that give the US dollar any value whatsoever, is its use in international trade as the global reserve currency, and then also the United States' military might. And as you all know, the United States' military might has not been looking so great here lately. Obviously, starting off with the debacle in Afghanistan, and then just this past week, reports coming out that, we're running out of ammunition. We don't really have a lot of ammunition. If we went to any kind of two-front conflict with, say, China and trying to supply Ukraine, we would run out of, munitions in about a week. And if you dig into the reports, it's saying that it could take years for us to build back the supply. Years. So, as big and as bad and as tough as the United States military may look to be, how tough could it be if it's being run by a bunch of woke lefties? They've kicked out all the real patriots, or at least tried to, and they've just embraced all the woke people into the military, the unpatriotic, anti-American left into the military, and now the military doesn't even have enough missiles and rockets and artillery to last more than about a week. Well, the other thing that gives the US dollar its value, the military might, doesn't look so strong either. I'm not saying that this process of the dollar collapse is going to happen really soon and overnight, but it could. This is a pretty big deal, and it's quite possible. And I'm not saying that, Macron isn't in the back pocket of Xi Jinping. I'm sure he is. Probably no different than Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden. They're all puppets of him. But they're seeing that, the ship's going to start sinking. They know it ahead of time. It's taking on water. More water than it can get out of the ship. And so I think they're starting to abandon ship while they can. And at some point, the ship sinking is going to just kind of overtake everything, and there's no stopping it at some point. Many of you, much like myself, have been saying this is going to happen for years, predicting that this is going to happen. And by all appearance, it looks like it's happening. And we can't say, well, that's great, fine. We don't need all these other countries. We'll just do our own thing with our own money. It doesn't work that way, folks. U.S. currency is nothing. It's fake. Everyone knows it. I mean, everyone knows it's fiat. And once everyone around the world stops trading in it, once they start dumping it, stop buying our debt, our government, well, we can't just keep printing more money because there's no one to buy the debt. Can't just keep raising the debt ceiling. And the most important thing is that when you go to buy things, prices are going to skyrocket. They could skyrocket to the point that the average person couldn't even afford a cup of coffee. It is said that in Germany in the 1920s, in the Weimar Republic, when they were going through their hyperinflation, that you could go into a restaurant, a little cafe diner, and order a cup of coffee, and by the time you finished drinking that cup of coffee, the price of the coffee had gone up so much that because inflation was rising that fast, because their currency was losing value that fast. Now, we're not at that point at all. In fact, the US dollar has actually gone up a little bit. It looks pretty strong on paper right now, just the numbers. But we have to understand that all of this talk and actual movement, because France has now purchased gas from China using not the US dollar for the first time ever. We have to understand that these actions are foreshadowing what is yet to come. And you and I, as folks that are preparing and getting ready for all this stuff, we got to get ready for this. And this is one that it's hard to get ready for it because many of you don't know what to do. Obviously, you want to stock up because at some point all the stuff that you're buying is going to get ridiculous expensive. And you want to be as self-sufficient as possible because it's going to just become crazy expensive to buy anything, and being able to do for yourself is going to be good. And then all of you have lots and lots of questions about your money, and that's a hard one. Bottom line is, the reality is that probably everyone is just going to lose. You're not going to be able to take all of your retirement. I've got $250,000 in my retirement. How do I save that? Probably not going to. That's harsh. That's bad. I know. Horrible advice. Why do I listen to this hillbilly? It tells me things like that. It just very well could be the reality. There are ways you can probably move that around and save portions of it, maybe all of it, but it's going to be hard. There's a gold-backed bank you can put it in. There's a link down in the description below. I don't get anything out of it. It's just something that might help you. You can move your things into maybe foreign assets. Just put it all in gold and silver. Who knows? There's all kinds of things you can do to try. No guarantee that any of it will work, because when a nation goes through a currency collapse, well, there's just not much worse that can happen to a nation. And I remind you that when Germany went through theirs, that's what paved the way for Adolf Hitler to take power. That's exactly what caused Adolf Hitler to take power. So we have to really get ready for this one, folks. This is huge. This is really huge. President, head of France, saying Europe needs to stop being so dependent on the United States and its currency. Maybe they see, what's happening on their own. I mean, from a military perspective, you know, you could use the argument that we're doing great with helping Ukraine, but when we hear that we're going through all these kind of munitions and spending all of this money, you know, a couple $100 billion, and Ukraine's not doing so well, that doesn't look very good. And what happens in Taiwan? Well, we either take on China and maybe or maybe not win, or we end up deciding, you know what, it's just not worth it. It's just all been talk, and we just can't jump in with China. Either way, especially if we don't, the rest of the world will see us again as weak. And I'm not advocating that we take on China over Taiwan. I'm just saying, if we don't, we're going to look really weak. If we do, there's an increased chance that we may not make it because we don't have the munitions to make it. And it doesn't matter. We could say, oh, well, we have this many more ships, and we have this many more planes, and we have this much more high tech. Well, if we don't have the actual munitions, I mean, I couldn't care less how many guns you have. If you don't have any ammo for them, then they're just big old metal pieces and plastic sticks. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I think that's what the rest of the world sees right now, that everything's looking pretty rough for the US dollar. So you need to be getting ready for this, folks. This is epic. And we're now into the third week of news of other nations backing away, or at least showing signs of backing away from the US dollar. And I'm actually kind of surprised. That first week, 3 weeks ago, two weeks ago or whatever, when the first time, you know, countries first started talking about it, I thought it might just be a little blip, a little pop, and then it'll be kind of cool off for a while before we hear more about it. We're now starting our third week of countries actively speaking out about walking away from the US dollar. And it basically means that we've got two scenarios that could happen. Either A, the US dollar completely collapses and we have ridiculous inflation and a valueless currency, or B, before all that happens or during that, they quickly rush out a CBDC, or both. In the end, none of it looks good. People have said, well, maybe we should just go back to gold-backed currency. That's a great idea. Unfortunately, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It would actually be very hurtful for our country, at least in the initial, for us to do that also. Dark days are coming for this country, folks. You can call me doomsday, whatever. I don't care. It's the truth. Dark days are coming. You need to get ready. Continue getting your houses in order. Preparing mentally, physically, and spiritually. Because I don't think you've seen anything yet. It's going to get bad. Thank you all for watching. Catch you in the next video. Throughout all history, precious metals have been the one solid asset that has held their value through banking failures, hyperinflation, and financial collapses. Visit the link below to moneymetals.com to find a wide variety of silver and gold to secure your wealth with real money. When I purchase online, I choose moneymetals.com because of their fast and secure service and competitive pricing on a wide variety of precious metals. moneymetals.com in the link below.